Yeah, 2021 too.
On that. Yep.
So you take a look at our key player matchup here. These stats reflect a lot of, the team stats as well. If you look at gold difference at 15, like Nongshim have not been doing well, right, in the early to mid game. They've been having a lot of their success in the late game. And you take a look at damage per gold, both players very efficient in the top 5 in that regard. Damage per minute is only a little bit higher here for Gory, but he's also played a lot of set, right? And some of these stats don't always reflect set's damage very well, but...
So you and I are a big fan of his champion pool.
Yeah, we've seen his Twisted Fate be a little bit shaky, something that I don't think we're going to necessarily see in the series. It's been kind of more of a counter pick to the Akali, which now in LCK is almost permanently banned. Got a DuckDom fan here. A lot of people saying Peanut is the leader, the role model, the one like elder, if you, so to speak, for Nongshim, but I think DuckDom is really coming up.
Yeah, no, I agree. And okay, it's been 5 years since he's come down to watch Faker. As you can see, 2016. That's a picture actually that she took with Faker. A longtime fan. It's pretty cool to see that she made it down, especially in the current environment where only 20% of the arena is allowed to, of course, come into the arena and watch the games. T1 have selected blue side with their home team selection.
Yep.
No surprise there.
Yeah, it's only Genji who's prioritizing the red. If you just watched your very first series of LCK in the previous series, you might be confused by that, but that's just a Genji flavor that we have here in the summer season. I am very excited to see where the priority of set goes in this draft because it's Gory's most played champion. He's 3-0 on it. We have not seen Faker play it at all yet this season. It's been banned oftentimes, again, not necessarily against him, but against T1. We've seen it played by Kana, but Faker is a player that often is known for his laning and his playmaking ability. Gory has looked really, really solid in lane. Like he is, even though his lane stats don't look amazing because he has played so much set, right? And he went 0-2 on TF. I think people will be surprised at how competitive that mid lane looks regardless of matchup. Gory is exactly the player that Nongshim needed. He's stepped right into perfectly Bay's role.
Yeah.
As the team has looked twice as strong as a result.
Absolutely. So excited to get into this pick ban and see, what these two teams are thinking about right now. It's going to be interesting to see where they value certain picks, such as the set, such as the Renekton. So, these big picks that we saw even in the last series. The Akali, interestingly enough, they decide that they do not want to force Nongshim to ban that away. Akali definitely a very often banned champion nowadays because of how strong she is and how versatile she is and how she can be flexed. They're also going to ban away the Renekton, not looking to first pick either of those.
Nongshim going to have some strong bans here of their own, and the Kalista towards Teddy, the potential Faker, Kana flex of the Lee Sin. And because of these blue side bans, I think Nongshim even has the opportunity to see the rare red side first ban of Rumble, potentially, actually. You don't normally have that opportunity because you're the one who's forced to ban the Akali, the Renekton sometimes, and recently Lee Sin has kind of been in that slot too.
The Lucian.
Yeah, the Lucian.
Another big one from last series where Fate was able to single-handedly force priority in the early game.
A missed ban here from T1. That is uncharacteristic, and that's not something that you want to see ever in professional play.
This is weird. I feel like this isn't the first time either. They're just going to skip the ban, as Ezreal is going to be the choice over on the side of Nongshim. And you could say, okay, that means that maybe they can get, some higher tier pick, but they also could have banned like Heimerdinger if they wanted to do that.
There is an argument, potentially, like missed ban in the second phase is way more critical, but there's an argument that they actually just wanted to refuse to ban because they want to have a lot more possibilities to counterpick on their second and third picks. But we'll see what the draft looks like before we can draw those conclusions. I don't want to assume that, but I do want to give credit to potentially T1 actually doing this intentionally, even though it's very unlikely.
Yeah. I mean, Faker didn't look too phased. It was his ban, and, maybe that was the choice. Either way, Lucian is going to be the first pick here. Varus immediately scooped up by DuckDom. They will also take that Rumble, which is just
a lot of really powerful range damage here in this draft already. So Nocturne is something that's left open here, and when you run the Rumble and the Varus together, Nocturne is definitely one that jumps out at you as a pick that, even though it's fallen out of priority big time here this week in the LCK, something that we could see. Teddy, you know, a great Senna player, have the opportunity to pick it here with perma mid-prio. Even with Lucian blind here, you're almost guaranteed to have that.
Yeah, and you can send a Kench to deny the Kench from the Varus as well. So that could be what they are looking for here, although there is a delay on just the auto-lock Kench, so maybe they are considering a different line here.
You can't stop the Thresh pick, so Set will come in instead, and you and I were joking about like Senna, fasting Senna with Set in the bottom lane seems like pretty strong too when you consider where he's at in this meta.
Yeah.
Bit of a meme, but there's the Nocturne I was talking about that works so well with Rumble Varus. You have very safe gap close, you have the ability to get Varus into position when the Paranoia comes down. He can do a lot of damage. Rumble up drops the Equalizer. I mean, if you end up with even, it's not a common pairing with the Varus, but if you end up with like Leona as a support here, T1 are going to have a really hard time getting Senna and Lucian into position to do any damage. You're going to be so reliant on that set engage.
Diana, taken off the board here. T1, you would imagine maybe you want to take away supports to go alongside the Varus, the Karma. Also another one where you just, you know, you mantra inspire everybody, and then you just sprint at the enemy team. Also provides you just a lot of mobility, tons of utility, obviously. I do like that ban.
Yeah, it's very, very powerful with what Nongshim are running. And I think we could safely say that the missed ban was a mistake based on what we've seen here in T1 selections. Just wanted to clear that one up. So we'll see a Volibear ban. Jungle pool getting a little bit thinned out with the Diana removed now too. They picked the Rumble. Lee Sin's gone. There's another possibility as a jungle pick. Udyr is nerfed on his clear time, on his Phoenix stance on this patch. Still very viable and might be what T1 go for here. It can be very, very strong with Lucian to set up those kills. You have a lot more kill pressure in mid when you do have that pick. Wukong is a big favorite of Rich's. Taking that one away.
Yeah, it's like the new Aatrox.
Yeah.
2021 version.
He often will even pick it blind.
Yeah.
To our dismay.
Wukong again. He plays a lot of Gnar as well. And Nocturne actually is 2-0 on the pick, so we might just see him hop onto the Nocturne here. It's a mid counter pick. The Kench seems obvious, and Kellen is kind of just laughing, saying, okay, well.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because T1 could have just banned this here. And it makes me believe, like, yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, like, I don't think you're ever going to, I mean, you wanted to pick it if you could have, but you took the set instead. So because you don't ban it, of course, Nongshim are going to take it because they have pick prio. But, I mean, looking at this game right now, I'm like, I mean, maybe it could have been actually set support. They did hover the Gragas there for just a moment, so it starts to feel less likely. The Azir here for Faker is always a big favorite for him. One of his best champions historically over the near decade of play he's had.
Yeah, it does mean they're not going to have that priority in the mid lane, as Lucian will scoot up to the top side of the map. And, I mean, Kana is a great Lucian player, so looking forward to seeing that matchup against what could be the Nocturne, depending on how Nongshim decide to flex it. The Gragas comes in here again and will be the final choice.
It's going to be a pretty solid lane into Tom Kench Varus down there on the bottom side. It's going to be a lot tougher for Varus to try to look for very aggressive trades, as looks like we will see the Sylas as the final pick here. So probably Nocturne into the Lucian. The Sylas goes to the mid lane. We have really good wave clear for Nocturne. It's not fun to play against Lucian as either of these champions, just because that's how he works. Like, he's a perma prio champion in almost every meta, in every solo lane. So here we go. I mean, this draft ended up being Gnarless. Actually, I was a little bit surprised by that, given how much Rich likes to play it.
The opposite of Gnarly.
Yeah.
It's very Gnarless. I agree.
You know, it's a champion Rich likes to play a lot. He could have put the Nocturne mid, and it was still a possibility with, you know, no Jace being removed here from Nongshim. It started to feel like it was a little bit less likely, but I think the power that you get with this prio on Lucian is extremely strong.
Nagori instead of Naguri, which is, I believe, a Nongshim product. Not 100% sure.
Nagori, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's one of the
ramyun.
It's one of the ramyuns, yeah.
Yeah, but also, of course, our beloved Nuggery, who is over currently in China.
It's also
the LPL.
It's also the word for raccoon.
Yeah. Yes. And Nagori, just to play on words for, of course, Gory in the mid lane, who is playing Silas for the first time here in Summer. So I'm curious to see how he will do up against Faker.
Yeah, the prio that you're going to have with Lucian here is so powerful around some of those early skirmishes. You're already going to have insane engages with set support that we pointed out early on was very possible. The plus Azir to Emperor Divide, the cask. This is a great draft at the end of the day here for T1. It looked a little bit shaky at first, but they rounded out so well. They don't feel so bad about that mispan at the beginning and how the draft was looking. A Senna that doesn't have a Thresh or a Kench, sure, but it's got a set.
Yeah, you know, all calculated, you can say.
All goes back to the set.
It really does. And it's Keria on the set. We haven't really talked too much about Keria, but this guy, I think right now, is the best support in the LCK in my mind.
Yeah, I think most people would agree with that.
Yeah.
Myself included, I'll put it out there.
We've been fans of him for quite a while, and I think he's really beginning to explode into that position. And there are a lot of good supports in the LCK as well. It's not like you know, he stands alone.
I mean, Beryl is slumping, right? You're contending with life. Kellen is in the conversation right now, too. Honestly, he's on the other side of the rift here. You know, Effort is up there. Now that Hex Flash is back, Effort definitely one of the players you're a little bit more worried about.
Yeah.
To be honest, without it, it has been, it was all right. But the engage tools and the team fighting that Nongshim have here are very limited in comparison to T1. You have long range, you know, Equalizer, Paranoia. You could steal a lot of the great ultimates. You know, every ultimate for T1 is pretty decent, and maybe not Senna's is like not that great. But besides that, you have a lot you can work with here as the Silas. So you're like, you get one of the 5 amazing engage ultimates potentially. 4, again, limiting the Senna, but I worry about if this game doesn't really snowball for Nongshim, how they win the late game, because T1's draft plays itself later on. It's got great scaling built into it. You have set, so that means that you can almost start any fight the way you want to. You can turn engages around on themselves.
Yeah, and set's going to be good into whatever engage that Nongshim have as well. Like if the Nocturne comes in, the Silas comes in, you can create a lot of space for your Azir and Senna to do the damage from the range. So I feel like just having that in your comp alongside of the Gragas as well, right? There's a lot of tools that they have, which is why we're kind of enjoying the T1 draft comparatively to Nongshim's this time around. Gragas has played Cuz this many. No, yeah, he's played a lot of games of Gragas. It's been around here.
Yeah, it hasn't been as popular recently, but Gragas jungle's got a long history in the LCK and League of Legends metas across the years. It's kind of crazy how in this meta too, the drafts that we see oftentimes are around a lot of flex picks, but you don't think about Lucian as much of a flex pick nowadays. Like, it's usually almost always mid, but not to be the case. The flex we saw of Set into support has only recently been a thing again because of Hex Flash, and the Gragas flex is another one that you don't really talk about too much, but because of all these champions, these 3 having so many places they could be in, it was really difficult for Nongshim to know 100% how this draft was going to come together here for T1. Scory is going to teleport back in and eat some Sand Soldier damage, because that's how it goes.
Saw a couple of cool pings, actually, from T1's side. It was probably Cuz just alerting his team to where the enemy jungler could be. He back-pinged the bottom side Rift, Herald, or Scuttle, and then the bottom Krugs camp as well. Just kind of showing the path that he could potentially take. And just to alert the bottom lane to potentially look out for ganks on the bottom side.
Yep. A lot of good communication coming down from Cuz. So it's been a pretty low impact early game here without the objective spawning. You know, neither of these teams have insane amount of control over their lanes to look for a scuttle fight. The fact that Lucian is top here instead of mid limits your power in that regard to try to look for a double scuttle. So it's been pretty calm, pretty casual. The real fighting starts for T1 when they hit their level 6s, because those are going to be really strong for them. But also the same is true of Equalizer, right? You know, Rich is going to be able to use his Paranoia. Those are the big spikes for them. But T1, I think, have an even stronger level 6 They get Showstopper. Like, they're the ultimate skirmish comp. Set is very happy for a Nocturne to try to paranoia into the fight early with no real items. They're like, I'll face break that.
Yeah. There's definitely some items he may need to build. He's already gotten a lot of sustain in the top lane just to deal with the Lucian, so we'll see what he has by the time he actually begins fighting. I think you might want to look towards the mid lane, maybe look for some kind of counter gank if you are Nongshim. If Faker decides to go in alongside of Cuz's Gragas, because you'd imagine that with that combo, you're going to be looking to set up plays onto the melee champions of Sylas and Rumble. So I think it'll come around to how they play around the vision and who is able to set up the fights on their terms, as Cuz is going pretty deep into the enemy jungle. Speaking of which, able to get a control ward very deep in there.
Yeah, he does get, actually avoids the Scryer's Bloom here too. Peanut will clear the control ward. Ends up being, you know, very passive exchange though otherwise. We see a teleport back to lane here from Faker. Gory actually tries to capitalize on this and he has 6 advantage, but as a result, no ultimate to steal.
Cannon just chasing Faker down the lane. It's going to give him level 6.
There it is. So now T1 can, once Cuz hits 6-2, and he's going to reset actually before he gets the opportunity to get in, he'll rotate in. I think this is a great opportunity for T1 to push this mid lane out and then look for a Drake fight. The bot prio is pretty insane right now. Like, Senna is up in the jungle, like, dropping a deep ward there. T1 going to actually use their teleport for Kana on the top side of the map here, though. And they're not actually going to group for it, not yet. You see that they're more interested in actually looking for a pick here onto Peanut. They know he's coming down that path. Look at these pings.
But just look at this right now. The Nocturne coming way down the top river, looking to potentially set something up. This could turn into a 3-on-2.
The fact that teleport was used for Kana right before this too means that T1 have really no intention of actually fighting for this if Nongshim want to stay. They'd rather just get this Lucian further ahead on the top side of the map. Otherwise, he would have saved it and waited, potentially hidden it and teleported maybe into the jungle, into a ward they had up there, but not going to group up. This forces Rich back into the top lane, and the low stake continues.
Yeah. And Faker, you know, he was getting in there, he was trying to clear out wards, but he immediately realized the situation and just got the hell out of there, right? There are good engage ultimates on the side of Nongshim, but there's not like hard CC engage ultimates, right? You're not really going to lock them down. There's no Gnar for the Sylas to steal and stuff like that. Sylas can use his own Emperor's Divide, and maybe that's the closest you're going to get. But other than that, you're just going to be diving very deep on in there, Paranoia Equalizer, and hoping that you can lock people down, because otherwise they're just going to be able to scoot away. As we saw Faker easily able to just run away from that.
Yeah, Faker's going to have quite a bit of the white damage, the first 15 minutes damage in this game because of all of the harassment he's been able to put on to Gory here in lane. And, you know, Gory is only 10 CS or so down in this game. He's been able to, you know, stay pretty okay here in terms of that matchup, right? He's only a little bit of gold down there, and this is what you expect. So, impressive performance against the most famous mid laner of all time. Here to start things out, as the bottom lane is left a little bit uncontested here, because they are going to see the group up here for T1 on the Rift Herald. That's going to be a lot of extra gold potentially over to the Varus bottom side.
Yep. They do spot Keria rotating down to the bottom side of the map, actually, and they're just going to ping that out. And Keria does have to take the long route away, but he's able to go down there a little bit earlier than he, you know, maybe would have been forced to if Nongshim would have hard committed to the Rift Herald fight, so he doesn't lose that much.
Yeah, I like the situation here for T1 because it's only one plate, bottom side. Kana catches the top wave. Faker's still got mid prio. Like, life goes on here across the board for T1, despite the fact that Nongshim didn't rotate up. They didn't, you know, grab a Drake. They weren't able to get anything counter-wise besides one turret plate and a half. And a half doesn't count, unless we're talking about A presses. So...
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if Nongshim aren't getting big objectives early on and they're not getting momentum in this game, you're still looking at a Azir and Senna in the later stages of the game, and I think they're going to be really happy with that. It's going to be difficult to blow any one member up immediately on the side of T1, as Cuz is able to just sneak that one out on the Rift Scuttle. And just continue playing passively because that's all T1 want to do.
Yeah, that's all T1 want to do right now with the lead that they have, as small as it is. And you really do start to wonder about Nongshim's game plan here because, like you said, the steals here don't give them that much incredible engage minus the Azir ultimate. It's going to be hard to pull off a defensive cask, and that's not really what you want to do if you're Silas. I mean, there are ways that it can happen, but later on in this game, when you're dealing with the scaling argument that you have for Faker and Teddy, plus the fact that you're so reliant on this paranoia type engage that can be dealt with very easily by the set, I'm worried for Nongshim here. I mean, it's only a small deficit in this game that they face right now, but it's what you know is coming down the pipeline that starts to feel very scary when they haven't had any, they haven't been able to take any agency in this game, they haven't been able to force any objectives, or even use a single paranoia. Like, this draft kind of feels like it's not being utilized the way it was supposed to.
All right, well, this is going to be their first chance as the flash comes in from Rich. Gets that fear down, and there is no escape for Kana, who decides, nope, not even going to flash away from this one.
All I had to do was complain about it, Valdez, and it happens right before us, right before our eyes. There's the first paranoia. Finally, the move is made here to try to get control over this early part of the game. They don't have Prio in the mid lane, but they have enough of pressure in the top lane here with that paranoia to actually have that engage on a solo lane against a squishy Lucian. Oh.
I suppose maybe he can drop that Rift Herald. Might want to save it for a lane where he's got some friends. But yeah, I mean, even as the Lucian, it's really difficult to get away from that. And Rich committed his flash to make it happen, and I actually like that Kana holds on to his flash.
Yeah.
And just takes it. He's like, okay, you know, this is what this comp does. If they're not pressing their buttons, we get a free win. So they pressed all the buttons on me. That's okay.
I'm going to watch it one more time. Rich instantly blocks it in, right? Like, he goes for the double here. You see the flash committed so he can get behind and guarantee that even with the dash from Lucian there that he gets the fear. We are going to see a counter gank here. So we see both jungles hovering around the top side of the map. Nongshim grouping up in mid, though. See if this ends up leading to anything. It seems very unlikely.
They really want to get value out of this Rift Herald. Rich and Peanut here to try to clear the waves. Equalizer about to come off cooldown. And this should get a charge as the cask is actually spell shielded. We got a one-on-one in the bottom side. Keria is just soloing Duck Tom just like that, able to take him out.
It all comes
on
back.
The top side, yeah.
It all comes back.
Comes back to set. We also had a kill, though, onto Kana, who this time he did flash, so it was traded back by Gnome.
It was traded back. They do get those plates on the top side of the map. It was very close to that not actually happening, which would have been disastrous there, given the resources they committed and the death onto Kana. So, able to bring this down to 3 turret plates. Faker gets a plate in mid, too. Something else to point out, a little bit of extra gold. He's got 2 blasting wands available. He is ready to fight in this mid game. Once again, let's see how this happens. Is this just another miss? Oh, nope. He did not actually misinterpret the set health. He just got flashed on.
The Duck Dom flash, too, on himself.
I wasn't going to say anything, you know. I was going to try to be the nice guy here, but...
Nice play by Kellen, actually. That was, he really set that entire thing up, trying to punish the aggressive Rift Herald drop, and they were able to get that kill because of that Tahm Kench ultimate.
T1 just seems like they, despite these, you know, small blunders and like the picks that we have seen for Nongshim, T1 just have such control over this game. And, you know, despite the picks on Kana, like, they still have gold lead as well. I mean, a lot of that's from the Rift Herald, but no Drake taken here for Nongshim. And for Nongshim, one of the ways you can always feel great even when your opponent has a later game comp than you is when you have 2 Drake advantage, 1 Drake advantage, and you can hold on to that and threaten some fights with the tempo advantage you get from that, where T1 does not want to come to the Drake because they want to just wait and scale up a little bit more and look for some later team fights because they have an amazing team fight comp. But the fact that we're now 14 minutes into the game, and even though Nongshim have gotten those 2 kills, we don't see any ability for them with the lack of prio they have in all 3 lanes to take this Drake. Means T1 are very happy that we don't even start the Drake equation until maybe 15 minutes or later into the game. Like, T1 are very happy about that.
They're totally fine to just coast here. just hanging out, you know? And things are just going really well for them. Like, say what you will about Kana dying a couple times, that's okay. You know, they lose some of that prio on the top side, but it didn't lead to them losing the first Rift Herald. It didn't lead to them losing their turret in the top lane. In fact, they were able to get the Rift Herald and do more damage to the enemy top lane turret. And so, still working out relatively well. Nongshim have been forced to use all of their pressure from the top jungle into that top lane, as Peanut has just been camping up here in the top side.
Yeah, I mean, Kana is always under turret here hitting these minions because we've seen so many resources committed for Nongshim to actually try to kill Kana, and they have killed him twice, but they haven't stopped him from CSing very well, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's doing a lot there, and it gives a lot of agency to Cuz to do other things on the map.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if Evolution is, you know, he doesn't have to absolutely destroy you. Like, he's going to be still good with the high amount of farm that he has.
Yeah.
And if he absorbs the pressure for your team, he's going to be enjoying it. Now, Nongshim are going to be able to get this as Carrier dodges there, not able to get the phase breaker, but here we go. Faker is here, and Duckdom just hates his life because there was no vision to spot Faker coming down, and he is never going to win that 1v2.
Doesn't have flash, you know, as you pointed out, wasted earlier. Didn't save him then, not available to save him now. Not that he would have had a chance. Yeah.
Where's your Tom Kents for the Varus, the guy who's supposed to keep him safe?
Well, he's been spending so many resources elsewhere on the map, like you and I have been talking about. And finally, Nongshim are going to be able to get this turret down, but unfortunately, it's not first turret blood, or first brick, whatever you want to call it, so they're not going to get that bonus. T1 have so many advantages that are unseen on the scoreline and in the items right now that it's hard to even explain why Nongshim's comp is going to fall apart later on. The one engage is we're going to watch Faker call for this.
연기 좀만 해봐. 얘도 프리지. 거의 잡았어. 공 아껴봐 일단.
For me, like, 연기 좀 해봐, like, can you put up a performance, like, can you act? So bait it, basically, is what he's saying, and
yeah,
works out super well. But yeah, going back to what I was about to say, like, the composition and how it fights versus the one paranoia we've seen from Rich has been used to close like a gap that a Lucian, you know, dash could have closed, right? But it was basically one really extremely aggressive play on the top side, but they haven't used this long-range engage style from Rumble Nocturne much at all, and it gets way harder later on. Way harder.
Yeah. Cuz comes up, even just his presence allows some more damage to be done to this turret. The proactive rotation here from T1 is going to be good for just that. There's not much else going on the map, and T1, I mean, it feels like, you know, they're in the lead. They could potentially just go for this dragon, but they just haven't shown any desire to go for that objective at all.
Yeah.
Just leaving it on the map.
There's just no reason to actually force a fight where you might lose in this stage where Nongshim is a little bit stronger at skirmishing when you have Supreme team fighting later on. And you can even know that Nongshim will never have the power to force those fights early against you if you just extend the game. And right now, you can see it's being taken here for Nongshim. But T1 just don't have any interest even contesting. In fact, they look like they might collapse onto the top side of the map instead. You can see Rich has backed off. This is going to be another turret, it looks like. Going over to T1, Kana is going to be guaranteed that extra gold. It's not a good look here, sadly. I mean, you can see that notification here for the Drake coming through. But it's just one small advantage and against many that will become more and more strong. Like I keep saying, once we do have those team fights. Because right now, T1 is very happy to not fight because Nongshim are not using the comp that needs to fight early to do so. You can almost put a 1 in front of that, too, in terms of the score, in terms of the kills. It feels like that's where we're headed. Unless Nongshim can really prove me wrong here in this mid-game, one Drake is not enough.
Yeah, I mean, their mid-game skirmishing is very nice. It's just, it doesn't feel like they have grouped or decided to make any big plays as a team at all. They have the second Rift Herald. Maybe they want to make a play around that mid lane or something. That could be a potential way to get it going, right? The equalizer to zone them away. You have some piercing arrows coming out from the Varus. They have good siege. They have a good ability to do that and turn off the lights in case T1 actually want to go into a fight when Nongshim are not exactly wanting to. But so far, it's just been farm it out and wait for a late game. And, you know, Nongshim not exactly going to enjoy that, I don't believe.
No. I mean, the skirmishing power of T1 should not be understated either, right? Like, they have a lot. I mean, post 6, like, their comp becomes really powerful, too, like we talked about in the early parts of the game. But later on, it scales so infinitely well. They're going to drop the Rift Herald in mid here. Late rotation up from Gory, but he's got a nice flank angle here. Going to keep Faker at bay.
This is what we wanted to see. Put the push on with the Rift Herald. Do something, you know? Look for the siege. Look for potential plays, but instead it's going to be Duckdom who has to be devoured. The cast comes out. Kerry has taken an insane amount of damage, but easily able to soak that on the set. And so it's just the Rift Herald damage into the turret, basically. Nobody's going to go down.
They gave the blue buff over to Gory, who was actually very low on mana, and he stayed over on the side lane. And there were a few, you could see those 2 control wards on the bottom side, right above where Gory is. The red one's there that actually T1 now has to walk through. And for a moment, I thought they were going to try to make a play, because Gory was super low on mana. And actually, you saw Faker back at that timing. I thought, well, this is a perfect moment to actually drop Rift Herald bot and maybe even try to threaten the inhibitor turret. If you group up, you can force T1 to rotate down. You have that vision advantage. You can use a Paranoia to collapse in. And then they just tossed it mid. They gave T1 so much time to respawn. They came right back mid. You don't get anything out of it. You see that rotation up from Gory. I thought we had like an amazing play potentially there for Nongshim. They just didn't take, sadly. Because that was the moment. The second Gory had no mana and Faker backed, I was like, okay, well, there's a chance here. He gets blue. He's going to have a lot of mana in just a second. But sadly, it's not meant to be. And like you said, all you get out of this is turret damage. Not even permanent damage on the map. Not a turret to go down, not extra control over the mid part of the map, no extra gold. T1 are just celebrating right now, very quietly, very silently about where the game state is.
Yeah. And, you know, we talked about the range and the siege potential from the side of Nongshim. T1 also have that in spades. The equalizer has to be used here in the mid lane just to push them away, otherwise T1 would have been the ones to take down the mid turret first, even though the Rift Herald was dropped here by Nongshim. And so we return to, you know, the lull state. It's mostly been this. We've had 4 kills from some of the skirmishes up on the top lane when Nongshim were actually pressing their buttons, but they've decided, you know what? Let's relax. Let's sit back.
Now, this is a very familiar situation with Nongshim where, okay,
this is one way to do it. There's a lot of damage coming out here from Rich, looking for the solo kill, but Kana splashing the right way, and now with Cuz coming up, they're easily able to isolate him.
Gory comes down here too, so another wasted teleport. That's a lot of lost value here for Nongshim. I mean, the kill alone is really terrible, but the fact that you commit the teleport there and aren't able to get anything out of it just really removes a lot of the pressure that Gory can have in the side lane.
At least Faker did have to mirror him on the bottom side with his own teleport, but...
And also the flash going down, I believe, for Kana too.
I think you are right, though. Like, probably Lucian and Gragas would have been okay against the Silas.
Yeah, he flashed over the wall there, so it is a flash for a flash, but... this is... It's not a happy time for Nongshim, and I was going to say it's a bit of a familiar story because Nongshim's leads in the 10-minute mark, the 20-minute mark, they're negative, right? They haven't had, on average, any advantages at those stages of the game, and they're very small disadvantages, like about 600 gold, like exactly we see in this game, but their late game has been where they've won their team fights, where they've actually been able to win these games. And T1 has also been in this situation, as if anyone watched the Live Sandbox game last Sunday, where they have pretty significant advantages in terms of their scaling and where they are in the game, sometimes even bigger objective advantages than what we have here, but they end up dropping the ball in the later parts of the game. So because of that, you know, if you're a Nongshim fan, there's still some hope. But in a vacuum, this looks very, very difficult for Nongshim to win.
Okay, well, let's see how this Drake fight is going to go down. Nongshim are aggressively attacking it as the Varus is going to smite it with his arrow, it looks like. We're zooming in on a potential engage. The Predator was popped here from the Gragas, but T1 decide, you know what? We're okay with this. It's not Soul Point. We have mid-track here on the mid-lane turret. We're going to get value other than the Drake that you just got. We're going to put up our Azir turret, set up camp here in the mid-lane, and force you guys to come into us as the cast there from Gory, not able to do much except push them away.
No, not very strong there. Not a really good engage potential there, unfortunately, for Gory. And these 2 Drakes, it could have been if Nongshim actually took the agency to take an early Drake instead of waiting until, what, it was like 16 minutes into the game they took the first one, then there was potential that this could have been Soul Point. And that's when you sort of go, okay, well, now T1 has to fight. This time they were able to just simply ignore the fight and walk away because they have that extra buffer zone. Yeah. Because this is only the second Drake, believe it or not, at 24 minutes into the game. So It's a small advantage, but like you said, T1 are very happy to get small advantages themselves elsewhere because the bigger picture is what you're more worried about.
Yeah.
And this is also a set game where Set plays support, but he's not really support because he's playing with a fasting Senna. So actually has real items.
He's actually really fed.
Yeah, 2 kills.
He doesn't have the largest amount of CS, but the 2 kills shore that up and put him on par with his 2 solo laners. He has the 2 items. No stopwatch. We'd like a stopwatch.
Eventually.
Instead of maybe the Ruby Crystal there, but it's okay. You can maybe get that in the future, as you mentioned. And yeah, I mean, I think we're already at the point where, yes, T1 have great scaling, and maybe they'd like to wait for later parts of the game. But I think they can already take team fights now.
Double,
you know?
2 items on the Azir, so Faker is very happy.
Look at this.
Which,
just not letting Rich do anything. Rich with no flash has to just run away from Faker. There's no hope for him in that fight.
Faker has stopwatch too, so there's just no fear of any rebuttal whatsoever when the rest of his team is so nearby. Then you have this really strong side laning from Kana. Now, Gory is getting a little bit of it done himself, and he can have this really long flank coming through. T1 actually need to be aware of this, because that is one way this can go poorly. You can maybe come in here and steal Faker's ultimate and try to look for an engage. Faker and Squad are going to back off, though, and try to collapse onto him, so he doesn't have that opportunity anymore. But, I mean, I'm really stretching my brain to try to think of how Nongshim have a miracle engage here. At least there's not an insane amount of map control for T1. Like, Nongshim still have their pretty good vision around Baron right now. So there's a little bit of agency in that regard, and like Gory is still playing around that surprise attack.
There is still, okay, yeah,
wow.
He reads into it. I mean, you see his positioning in the lane. He's all the way up against the left wall. Like, he knows that he absolutely could be in that brush, confirms it, and is able to avoid any kind of aggression.
Yeah, it's like, well, last time I saw Gory, he was very much over here, and we haven't seen him since, so...
He could still be over here.
It's almost 9 years of pro gaming, game sense that you're going to have from Faker here.
Yeah.
So he is able to read into the unknown just from what little information he gleaned from the map moments before. We'll see if Set buys that stopwatch now. In fact, he does. Everything's coming together, Valdez.
Everything's coming together. It all makes sense now. Set buys a stopwatch. Harry has been listening to the cast, obviously. He's just trying to make me happy. Definitely not, but that's what I'd hope for.
It makes him look good. It makes us look good. It's perfect.
Yeah. Teddy's on 97 stacks right now. Just free. Like, there's been no pressure put on the Senna. I don't think they've engaged onto the Senna once.
Yeah.
He's just like sitting here in the mid lane. He's like, yeah, okay. Looks at his watch. 10 minutes go by. He's like, yeah, okay. 100 stacks.
This is like when, you know, they've like pre-ordered, Nongshim pre-ordered something, and then they realized a little bit too late they didn't want it, and they're like, they called Riot Korea. They were like, can we cancel this draft? And Riot's like, I'm afraid the game has already begun.
Yeah.
I'm afraid the early game has already passed, so not going to be able to give you a refund on this one, unfortunately. Like, it almost feels like Nongshim gave up on this comp just because they didn't utilize it outside of those few moments on the top side of the map.
Yeah.
They don't trust. It's like they didn't trust it. Now you can't blame them for being passive because they've missed their window. And to do anything aggressive here is almost suicidal, right? I mean, there's just you're really going to be jumping into the fire. Out of the frying pan into the fire is the situation here for Nongshim right now. You're going to have to hope for maybe Gory gets a flank, maybe Rich is able to set something up on these side lanes. Like, these are moves you can do that will give you a little bit more map control, and maybe that leads to vision control, maybe that leads to a mistake. A lot of maybes, but at least they get that top turret.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing you can do with the Nocturne in the side lane. You set the Silas on the other side. You begin to, okay, here's one thing. They go for it. The aggressive play. The stopwatch is there. The Equalizer got such incredible value as Rich tries to kill Faker, and he will. But he did have to flash for that one, going very deep under that mid turret. And, you know, Nongshim, they still have these pieces in their comp. They still have the buttons that they'd love to press. But, you know, took them a while. They finally pressed their buttons, and they're only able to trade 1-for-1.
Yeah, and part of that's because they had that really deep wraparound from Rich. He had that turret down. Look at all the vision that they have around this Baron pit, too. And unfortunately, because it's a trade, and because of all the health bars that went down low, we had Kellen go down to like half. Duckdom was almost dead. Now T1 actually get that vision. So the 1-for-1 trade the Senna ultimate come down. So Duckdom's low, he can't fight anymore. And Rich was going to die no matter what, but they only get one for it. But T1, let's take a look at the Baron pit now. It's actually not that bad, as you see Kellen does go over there, clear a little bit of that away. But they had a lot more control over this part of the map that they lost now after that exchange. T1, or rather, Nongshim, that is.
Yeah, I mean, I like that they're trying to go for this. I do not like this positioning, as that's going to be the free kill on the Duckdom. Not sure what's going on with them on this Varus today. Just getting caught out over and over again, not expecting the Senna and Set combo to engage on him like that, but absolutely, he was there alone. They eat the free Varus, and they're going to go in for dessert onto this Baron as Rich looking at frontline, but Faker isn't having any of it. Gory is looking for it. The equalizer is pretty nice. Faker is burning down, and he's going to go down to the Rumble. The Devourer comes out on the Gory, but look at the frontline. Rich is going to soak so much damage with that stopwatch. He's trying to get onto that backline. Not able to kill Kana, but there's so many low health bars on the side of T1, and Peanut is so huge on this Rumble. Frontlining, able to get into the Zonias. That was like the 6th one we saw in the fight. As now Kana is all alone. The lick will miss, but Nongshim will hit on the team fight.
Nongshim, 20-minute gold deficit. 10 minutes into the game, 15 minutes into the game, gold deficit. 30 minutes, that's when it starts to come online. That's when you see these good team fights. And once again, this was a bit of a greedy fight from T1. They didn't know where Gory was. He's on the edge there. Such a great engage from him. And the fact that they have Devour means that he can actually survive that initial burst. He can heal himself up afterwards, and it's a lost fight from T1 from that moment on. And what looked like seemed to be a fairly safe Baron from T1's perspective ends up being a lost team fight that goes over. So we're going to watch this perspective of Duckdom.
80 carry in 2021.
Yeah, I think you said it best. I don't have anything to add. So look at where Gory is here. They have a ward, but it's too late. He steals Faker's ultimate away, and Faker is stuck between a rock and a hard place. You can't actually go to the left because Gory will blow him up. And then while they focus on Gory, the rest of T1, he gets devoured. So you just can't kill him there. Rich does so much with the stopwatch, and T1 spent a majority of that fight doing nothing because Faker was caught between a rock and a hard place. Teddy was not in a position where he could actually do any damage. Rich did everything with that stopwatch, and like you said, Peanut is so fed. You can finally see it when the one opportunity he has to actually do damage in a 5v5 fight, it leaks through. He's got 3 items online now. He's got an Oblivion Orb too. Nongshim just found an angle back into this game.
Yeah.
Blink of an eye.
I think, you know, 5v4, T1 was very aggressively posturing there. They're like, you can't fight us. What are you doing? But then the second Faker gets burnt to a crisp in the span of about a second, they immediately are like, oh crap. And Nongshim played the fight out really well from there. It was essentially a 4v4. There were a lot of low health bars, but the Devour value that they got was pretty insane. Not to mention all the stopwatches that were used. As we're having another engage come in, Duckdom this time around, he's got his own stopwatch as he is going to get kidnapped, but this time around, he has his team, and he's able to fight front to back. Now, Gory was in the T1 lineup at the same time as Duckdom gets insane value from the brush, but Faker looking desperately to take down Kellen, and he will. And that is a big pick that could open up this Dragon, or maybe the mid lane here for T1.
T1 really want to make a play for the mid lane, it looks like here. They've got a minion wave. Gonna actually scoop around, try to remove some vision instead. You know, with only 4 members up, Carrier down, it's a little bit risky. You can take the safe Dragon play, tie up the Drakes 2-2, and again, slow down the pace of the game. Though we've talked about to death T1's strengths with his draft and their engage tools and how strong they're going to be in this late game. But like Lucian isn't that amazing later on, and also the execution of this draft still has to be good, right? Like you have so many tools, but if you don't use them correctly, it just simply doesn't matter. So we're going to see Kana do a ton of damage here, right? And you know, we know how this fight ends. Duckdom is able to kill the set, but Gory gets caught. He's alone there. He's picked. He tried to turn this into something bigger with Rich's paranoia. A little bit of an overextension here from Nongshim. We know Kellen gets picked afterwards.
Cuz almost died.
Meanwhile,
okay, here we go. We're pressing our buttons. We're looking for the set. What does Set do best? He absorbs pressure.
He's a sponge,
He absorbs damage. Somebody make the Set sponge skin already. As you can throw everything. I mean, they threw so much in. They didn't use the equalizer, though. As the follow-up cast and the equalizer does come in. The burn damage is so huge. and Kana goes down, but the follow-up engage from Faker is good. They get the top 10s, but now Faker's all alone. The rest of his team is too low, and Noxium win a big fight. They're gonna be looking for this inhibitor.
Oh, and they might be looking for more than the inhibitor here, Valdez. Peanut has had so many games where in the early game, he doesn't pop off, he doesn't get fed, but he doesn't die. He does not make mistakes, he does not feed enemy laners. He plays a very passive farming jungle style right now. We've seen it on the Nilly, we've seen it on his Rumble, and later on in the game, he makes the big plays. This is another one of those big moments for him. And Noxium, they're looking for more. Like I said, they might, if they have minions here, they might be looking to end the game. They're gonna have to back off, but such a huge turning point. We had now 2 big game-winning potentially fights for Noxium. If there's a different state of the game, look, they have the minions here. They're looking for more.
They're going with this one. There are a lot of wards behind them. They got to be real careful.
Be more decisive than this, I think.
Well,
one way or the other.
I think they just can't stay here. Like with double teleport on Kana and Faker, you got to just back away. You have to respect the teleport flanks, and they will. It takes them a little bit, but they eventually land on the right decision.
Yeah.
There's no big objectives. They are not really going to break the pace at this point in time. So
exactly, and if you look at the side lanes, both the bot and mid lane didn't have any pressure to where they could have just backed off and taken an inhibitor. So it felt like the best opportunity was just to wait for the minion wave, regroup, and maybe hope for another pick that wins you the game. If you don't, you do back away just in time for those teleport flanks to not be an issue. I'm worried about T1 here in the late game. The execution of this draft doesn't work out as well as, you know, I really expected that it was going to.
Yeah, it's interesting to see just how insane this damage can be. The poke from, by the way, the Senna ultimate that gets stolen, the piercing arrows, the equalizer, very obvious. Look at this, deny on the back. Rich is up 3 levels on the Senna up here as Teddy is desperately trying to get away. He will die. That's a pick right there. The set goes in. Keria sets up a massive play with this one, but the Rumble is still alive. Peanut is so scary, but they hold on to their inhibitor somehow with that engage.
Somehow, miraculously, the fact that Rich isn't here means they can help push this back, and I won't say what it all goes back to, but at the end of the day, they have a really nice engage there. The inhibitor survives, but Noxium are still in firm control of the map. We'll watch this one more time. We're going to go back to this mid-game, or mid-lane fight. You see the root comes through.
And crucially, the equalizer wasn't used.
I wanted to see,
Take a look at how much damage this poke is able to do.
Yeah, I wanted to see where Kana ends up in this, but he actually goes in aggressively, and then the equalizer catches him on his way out.
Yeah.
Everyone on T1 is so extremely low after this that Faker being out this far is, you know, a bit of a disastrous situation. Their comp has very little magic resistance.
Yeah, and Peanut has not missed once. I mean, this guy, he's got like a homing, it's like a homing missile, a homing equalizer onto as many members as he would like, as we're going to take a look at this play as well.
Yeah. Paranoia is used, so they have no vision here. They actually back up behind the inhibitor because the Paranoia was used on the top side. I want to see Keria's exact angle he takes for the attack here. Flash is actually for it. That was really well played. Haymaker is so strong. I mean, it does true damage. You have the extra shield. His grit was basically maxed out there. 45 seconds until this next Drake. It's not a soul for either team, but it will be soul point. Don't know if we'll get to see that soul in this game because the first Drake was so late. We're almost 40 minutes in before soul point. Death cap is up for Gory. Peanuts 1-0-9. Has his Void Staff now.
Yeah.
Not that there's much magic resistance, like I said before, to Pierce.
And that's really the one X factor from this composition. You can shut out the lights, you can poke them before they're even able to engage on you. And you can see now T1 are aggressively posturing. They want to engage before they get poked out here. And we'll see how it works. Like you said, I think T1's comp, it requires some really great execution. As the equalizer comes in, that is big damage, but there's no follow-up this time. You press your buttons, but you got to get the follow-up in there. The Paranoia is used. That's gone as well. Kana is very low, though.
I mean, with all the low health bars here, T1 have to take some time to back away. They're going to maybe try to trade this for a Baron, but it's so obvious. There's so much vision here. I don't think Noxium has happened. T1, you got to back away. You're going to lose both, and you might actually lose the game if you get wiped here. Oh, this is so risky. This is so greedy.
The TP should come in, but the thing is that they might say, okay, we can do this because of the cooldowns were just used, but Equalizer's almost up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like a 30-second cooldown,
Not to mention Paranoia is halfway up, so I mean, that's not going to be there for the fight, but yeah, these cooldowns are not extremely long. I don't think you could try to look for an objective here. You will lose the game if you get wiped there. You might lose the game either way. It's a really terrible situation here for T1. They have such a range problem in this game. Not the Kasky was looking for, but
I mean, it's poke, right?
Yeah.
It fits in really well with their comp, at least.
sure. The damage is so high for Nongshim, and it's so easy to execute the Equalizer poke and the Varus poke in this late game scenario because we're 40 minutes into the game with full items coming up for these players. The gold difference here is kind of insane. Teddy has been a bit of a non-factor. Like, Set was the one who absorbed all the gold on the bottom side, as we talked about. And the gold issue is obviously because it's fasting Senna too, but
also the jungle and the mid lane, right? There's some big wallets there for Nongshim. Peanut and Gory have just been so consistent, right? Like, nothing really happened. They made 0 mistakes. And once the action started, they've been clean.
there's very little peel for Senna to actually do safe damage in this game.
Okay, here's an opportunity. Kana's looking for Rich. Rich looking to turn it around, but with the Senna help, should be good. The Fear lasts for so incredibly long. He's going to get the GA. As Gory thinking about getting in there, but Rich will be able to back away, keep his life, but not his GA.
Yeah, not his
Lucian
GA.
will.
The Lucian will keep the GA. Lucian range is so low, the Senna range is low, that you really need to rely on Keria, I think, here in these upcoming fights. You know, if Keria can actually have a really nice engage once again, you can get Faker to do a lot of damage long term. You can even have a follow-up Emperor's Divide. It all has to start here.
Oh,
not here.
Running into it. You got to be careful about this. And yeah, I mean, T1, that's why they're aggressively posturing. They're trying to use the range of the Azir, the Senna, to try to poke away in their own right and try to get an engage with Keria, but so far it's just been so tense. I mean, we're 41 minutes in here and it feels like a fight could break out at any moment.
I mean, it certainly could, but it's so hard for T1 to be the ones to start that fight without vision control, without prio. They have mid prio, but no vision here. Keria looking for the long con play.
I like this, but Gory's coming in. The Equalizer doesn't do much. Faker has to flash out of it, though.
Not a great fight for either team, but Nongshim looking to pounce here.
Trying to cut off the minions and stop the mid push. They will be somewhat successful, although they pull themselves apart.
Gory has Emperor's Divide, don't forget. T1 need to respect this.
Okay, they will keep position on the Baron, and that is really important. They're going to steal away the blue buff.
This is actually such a tense game, and we're so late into it that, I mean, even T1 have an opportunity if they can actually scrap together one team fight that they haven't been able to do for the last 3 or 4 major exchanges. They can win this game with the long death timers. We have 42 minutes in.
Yeah.
Baron buff available here.
Teddy's getting pretty aggressive with this positioning now. I mean, he's up to 158 stacks. Like, he's going to be able to just beat artillery, basically, as this game comes along. But they really do need that.
Yeah, but you have to remember too that if he tries to look for that type of play and gets paranoid on, if there's no peel, you know, if Cuz doesn't have his cask available, for example, you know, if Faker isn't nearby enough to use his Emperor's Divide, like, he's very vulnerable. The same could be true of Kana here, with these very low range. I mean, obviously range extending here for Senna over time here. Champions are always going to be the ones that are vulnerable. Keria leading the pack.
Vision is coming in. And let's see, they're going to pull off of the Baron as Keria not able to find, actually, as he gets spell shielded. Nongshim are all over the place, but that is a massive Equalizer separating Faker from the team, but it does not matter. He stands his ground and is able to stand up to Rich. They take out the Nocturne, but remember the old days of lethality Varus on red side. It's so hard to do Baron against this.
Hard.
You just get poked down. And I don't know if they can do it. I mean, they'll have to engage onto the Varus.
I mean, the scuttle here is actually super important because they have a lot of vision. They cannot clear that.
They have a lot of damage. They do have a lot of damage here. Maybe they can ignore the Varus.
Equalizer's almost up for Peanut.
Yeah, the Equalizer will be huge, but it does not matter. The damage comes out from the Varus. There is the Equalizer. It burns them down.
They're
Teddy
trapped.
has to get out of this one. Cuts finds a massive combo
play
onto the Rumble, but he dies immediately afterwards as the rest of T1 say, no, we're too low. We cannot follow up. We have to back away.
What a heroic play from Cuzzo, because without this play, they don't get out like that. It's way, 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 way harder for them to actually escape. The whole game plan here for Nongshim was actually to trap them or prevent them from coming in, as you watch this one more time. But the Equalizer here is massive. Faker turns this around. But the fact that they don't finish off the rest of the kills and all that chip damage coming through from Ducktile means that doing this for T1 is still so greedy. They pull it off. We're going to see the Drake taken on live. But watch this retreat path.
Cloud Soul.
watch his retreat path is cuz cast, body slams here, goes gold, so the rest of his team can escape. They actually don't take the advantage early. They're like, maybe we get more out of this, but no. They do get out of there as soon as he goes down. It's Cloud Soul for Nongshim, which is pretty huge for their composition and closing the gap.
Yeah.
The ultimates too.
And all those ultimates.
Yeah, like the equalizer is basically a basic ability now.
Feels good. Feels real good for them that they're able to pull that off. We have Majais here on the Silas, and Peanut is nearing his final item. We're gonna be, yeah. I mean, they're gonna be able to basically call in tactical nukes with their composition. And T1, I mean, they have so much power in this late game, as we have been highlighting all game. But again, it's going to come down to dodging poke, good positioning, good engagement. This is the longest game so far, as we have passed the previous longest game, which was 45 minutes and 9 seconds, a Gen G win over Hama Life Esports, match 8.
The Gen G is definitely trying to extend their average game time to be the longest in the LCK. Had quite a few long games this season. The KT series, the Hana Life series, the series we just had. So something to keep in mind. But this game is now on such a knife's edge, so volatile. The items here for Kana even are like, when you look at that, you're like, well, if you try to blow him up, you can't easily do it because he's got the Bloodthirster and he's got a GA, which wasn't popped earlier.
Yeah.
Riches is now back up, but like, who do you paranoia here now? Like, it's funny how we talked about how T1's comp was so good for 5v5 fights in the late game that they executed it poorly for a while, and then it felt like, well, I guess Nongshim just win this. But then as time went on, they started pulling it off. T1 actually started using their comp correctly and are getting these exchanges, and the late game with the Senna is starting to really show itself. So it feels like we're starting to bring up those same arguments, those same discussions. I mean, we are only 1,000 gold the difference between these two teams at 46 minutes in. I mean, it doesn't get closer than this, folks.
Yeah. This is a treat. This is only game 1 of the best of 3.
Yeah.
Welcome to the LCK. We have best of 3s over here. Always fun to watch these extended ones. And who knows what these teams do. I mean, we might just wait for the Elder Drake to come out here, as we're on 180 stacks right now for Senna. But Nongshim's comp is relatively good at keeping her at range, so she's not just able to free fire, as you know, we have been pointing out here.
Got to be so careful about stacking up like T1R in that brush. An equalizer comes down, comes up again in like 20 seconds, do it again. Then you've got the Varus poke. Suddenly you can't actually group up anymore. There's no objective right now on the map, so neither of these teams have any reason to try to push the issue. I see a lot of comments online oftentimes in games like this where it's like, well, this team has a Nocturne and why aren't they pushing? And Nongshim's throwing away this advantage. In a game like this, you don't want to risk a fight that could cost you a game when you could actually take it with more vision control. When you're grouped up, you have control of that. You can use the equalizer and choke points, for example, around objective. There's no reason to just attack because you have paranoia and because you can engage long range. You want to wait for the perfect opportunity, the game-winning opportunity. So when everyone's almost at full build across the game, I mean, almost all 10 players are, you don't really actually care about the minion waves either. You're just like,
yeah,
objective, win game, that's all. That's all that's in your brain.
Yeah. You don't want to do the old Live Sandbox thing where it was like, see enemy champion, go for any enemy champion regardless of the scenario. They have kind of grown out of that. I think they've developed really well past that, even though they do retain some of that style. But, I mean, here we are, 48 minutes in. We are in the longest game of LCK Summer 2021 so far. And who knows, who's going to be the guy who makes the big play?
Yeah.
Is it going to be Keria with his huge set that he's had all game long to really put down this Varus from early on and not really make him too much of a factor until the mid to late game?
Is it going to be Ducktom who ends up getting the chip damage with Peanut done, you know, to win this? Is it going to be a sick paranoia? I mean, with GA up, it seems like that's just going to make it be so difficult. I mean, it's never worth it to engage on the Lucian, who is such a crazy glass cannon himself, who's basically a fountain laser in this game too. Low range, but when Nongshim have a comp that walks into you, you're very happy about that. That's something we've discussed this entire time. Gory changes his boots, gets the Merc treads here. Smart choice. Is that he's no longer caring about you know, how this game started, but wants to make sure he has the power boots for how it ends.
Yeah. Definitely something you can do in your own games as well. for all you guys watching out there.
I mean, we've even seen in pro play sometimes people selling their boots to get an additional item.
Yeah.
Very rarely, but it does sometimes happen.
Tom Kent's just talking with his friend. And we have the other spawning here in 50 seconds, the Baron spawning now. So we didn't have any action after the last objective, but now the players will be forced to fight over this. And both teams have some pretty ridiculous objective damage, especially T1.
Yeah, you talked about the red side defense here with the Ivaris, but like it's too late.
Yeah,
too
they
slow.
just don't even have any time. I mean, in goes Peanut. There's no steal. That's a nice equalizer that comes in, but Carriot denies them. In goes Rich on the left side. Who's going to be more tanky? I would bet on the set, but now he's being kited out. And